Frenchie's Art Gallery, located on historic Oak Street beside the Maple Leaf Bar. With over 3,000 square feet of space, it features a large gallery front room and Frenchie's personal art studio. Frenchie's Art Gallery is also connected to the Maple Leaf Courtyard, which is ideal for the New Orleans night scene. Frenchie's Art Gallery, 8314 Oak Street. Yeah, you're right.
So here's the bottom line. Well, it's funny that you say that. Let me tell you. Good evening and welcome to Primetime Sports. Hey, it's an eventful week in the sports world in South Louisiana. Well, as the college basketball conference tournaments begin this week across the country. Hey, the LSU Tigers, well, they finally broke a school record 15 straight losses with a win last week over Tennessee. However, the thrill of victory for the Tigers was short-lived as they lost their 16th conference game, the last game of the season to Mississippi State. And ironically, well, it's the Bulldogs who this week will be LSU's first-round opponent on Wednesday evening, Hey, other local teams that are playing, how about the UNO Privateers? They won their first Southland Conference championship ever and its first title of any kind in literally 20 years. The Privateers are getting a well-deserved double bye. They're going to not play a game in the first or second round, and they only have to win 2 to get that elusive NCAA tournament bid. Regardless, they are guaranteed at least a spot in the NIT. And they're going to play this Friday. Like I said, Mark Schlesinger was the coach of the year. Congratulations to him. Eric Thomas was the player of the year for the Privateers. Hey, Tulane, the Green Wave. Hey, I went with Coach John Brady. We saw Tulane beat Tulsa this Sunday, and they won 2 of their last 3 games. They're actually playing some very good basketball, losing some close ones towards the end of the season, but they did get in the victory column twice, and they get a rematch of Tulsa in the first round. That's going to be Thursday at 5. Hey, let's switch sports because it's a great weekend for college baseball for the local teams. Hey, although LSU lost a close game to TCU, who was number 1 in the country, and then on Sunday they had a walk-off loss to Texas Tech. On Saturday, they did shut out a very good Baylor team. Jared Poche, incredibly, has started this season with 22 scoreless innings. And as far as the rest of the teams, you see that in parentheses there is what the teams did this past week, and then the final total record is on the right. Louisiana Tech, you see at 3-1 for the week. They're 11-1 overall. UNO, 3-1 last week, doing 9-3. Southeastern, you see the rest of them, UL Lafayette as well. Hey, the high school basketball playoffs, well, they are getting started today. How about this? And they had a game last night in the lower division. But let's talk about some of the private stuff going on because St. Aug and Brother Martin, how about this one? They're in Division I. That's a Catholic League matchup in the Final Four. All these are Final Four matchups going on this week. Scotlandville and McKinley are the other ones in Division I. Congrats to De La Salle, St. Thomas More. They match up in Division II, as do U-High and St. Michael. Division III, it's Country Day, Riverside Academy. Dunham and Episcopal, and how about the 5A matchup? Bonneville and Chalmette with the McDonald's All-American. Landry Walker snuck in. They are going to play West Monroe. I have a great show for you. Josh Katzenstein from Times-Picayune, he's all over the NFL Combine. Karl Benson, the commissioner of the Sun Belt Conference. Kenny Farrell, the head coach of the New Orleans Jets, is going to talk all soccer. And, of course, our basketball correspondent, John Brady, right here on Primetime Sports. Welcome back to Primetime Sports. And I love to hear those sounds on the piano. My man, John Papagro. I want to thank him as well as my entire guest list today. Hey, you know what? We talked in the open about conference tournaments coming up this week. Baseball is in full swing. But for Saints fans, this only means one thing. It's the second season. Free agency, it starts now. The NFL Combine, as you know, is in Indianapolis this past weekend and the end of last week, and it actually didn't wrap up till yesterday. But I have my next guest here, Josh Katzenstein from Times-Picayune and NOLA.com. He was up there in Indiana, and he followed the whole followings. He talked to Sean Payton. He talked to a lot of the players, and here he is right here. Welcome to the show for the first time.
Thanks for having me on,
Josh
Scott.
Katzenstein. Hey, first of all, I got to ask you, I met you last summer when you first started, but you've been on the radio all week long. I mean, it's funny because I had already asked you to be on, and then from that moment on, I think every radio show is like, hey, coming up next, it's Josh Katzenstein, so you've been busy.
Yeah, man. Ever since this Brandon Cook stuff went down, it was Philly radio, Tennessee radio. People in New Orleans, too, were very curious about everything that was going on. So, yeah, they keep wanting to hear exactly what's happening with Brandon Cooks. Is he a bad guy in the locker room? And I just kept telling them, no. The Saints are just trying to improve the defense, and trading him is one of the best options to do so.
I want to get to Cooks in a second, but I like to start the show off with letting people know a little bit about yourself. Obviously, you're not even a full year in the Crescent City. What's your background? And first of all, what are your thoughts about living in New Orleans?
Well, I love it here. I was born here. So I was born here, lived in Mandeville for 7 years, and then I grew up in Minneapolis, and then spent the last 5 years working in Detroit covering the Lions. So I sort of always wanted to get back to New Orleans,
Wow, okay.
I mean, anyone who's lived here pretty much always wants to come back.
Sure.
So I definitely fell into that category.
I was gone for 3 decades. I know what you mean.
Yeah. So no, I'm back and loving it, and just getting ready for the frenzy that will be free agency in the draft.
It is on. By the way, I have to throw this out because I have to say, as of this taping, because we're going to air all week long, and there's going to be a lot of action going on, but as of this taping, here's the information. You brought it up first. Let's talk about it. Brandon Cooks. The moment Indianapolis seemed to start, that rumor started flying, and it seems like it's gained some legs.
Well, yeah, no, it's definitely something the Saints are considering, because like I said, they are looking at every possible way to improve their defense, and Brandon Cooks is probably their most tradable asset when you consider where he's at with his contract, how he's performed, and how young he is. I mean, he's already got 2 1,100-yard seasons under his belt, 2 seasons with 8+ touchdowns, and he's still only 23. So you have to think that that's something that would interest plenty of teams. And as I reported a few days ago, there have been at least 5 teams that have made overtures to the Saints about him. The Titans, the Eagles, Patriots are among them. I know another team is interested in trying to acquire him for defensive help, by giving the Saints defensive players. To this point, the Saints haven't received an offer good enough. But if they get a mid-first round pick with someone told me that if the Saints could get the 18th pick, for example, from the Titans, they would actually be willing to send back Cooks and a 4th round pick or something along those lines, because they really just want to have a second pick in the first round because it's such a strong defensive draft. Now, worst case scenario in all this, they get to keep Brandon Cooks, so the Saints are sitting in a good position because they could bring back what was probably the best trio of receivers in the NFL last year, but they know their offense is going to be good as long as they have Drew Brees, so they want to make sure that they can, get a defense that'll measure up.
Yeah, the offense has been first almost every year since Brees has been here, first, second, third, fourth. The worst they've been out of 32 teams is 6. But here's the thing. There's only 3 receivers in the last 3 years. You've seen the stat that have 1,100 yards, last 2 years, I should say, 1,100 yards and at least 8 touchdowns. It's Odell Beckham, it's Antonio Brown, and it's Brandon Cooks. I wouldn't put Brandon Cooks in that category. He is more of a pass-happy offense, and that sounds like a beautiful stat, and he is a great receiver. However, the one thing I think would hold people back is that his contract is up after next season, correct? I mean,
well, yeah. So they could sign him to his 5th-year option. They would have to do that by May, so that would keep him around for 2018. And then they could, if he's still around in 2019, they could give him the franchise tag. I mean, they wouldn't have to negotiate a new deal with him for quite a while.
Right.
But at the same time, they just tendered Willie Snead on his exclusive rights free agency, something they had to do before free agency begins Thursday.
Sure.
And then, but they are negotiating a bigger contract with him because he's worth more than the minimum salary. And then, they still have Michael Thomas, but I think the big issue here is that they want to keep spending their money on defense, and they want to keep using their best assets to improve the defense. So ultimately, you don't want to be paying three receivers a big sum of money when you know that you're paying a quarterback a lot. They're paying Mark Ingram a decent chunk of change. They got some big money deals on the offensive line. So that's just another factor in this whole Cook situation.
All right. You brought up Snead. You brought up Michael Thomas. I'm not a guy that gets into rumors, but I got to bring it up because 3 different people brought it to my attention yesterday. What is the bottom line between this Cooks-Thomas little feud? Keenan Lewis got involved and apparently privately taped Michael Thomas, like kind of Swaggy P style. What's going on with this thing?
So Michael Thomas said that wasn't him on Facebook Live or Instagram Live talking to Keenan Lewis. But yeah, there have been these little what could be considered shots at each other going on. I think it actually started a few days ago. I didn't even see this.
Yeah, let people know what happened.
So Willie Snead was on Instagram and he posted something, a picture of him and Drew Brees, and one of the hashtags was, why would I ever leave? And then a couple
the GOAT, the
GOAT,
GOAT,
right.
Right?
So, and obviously you could read into that there's been reports that Brandon Cooks is the one driving these trade reports, but I haven't heard that. I heard it's just the Saints willing to listen. So I never got the sense that Brandon Cooks was unhappy with the team. He just wanted to have more of a role in the offense. Then they use him so much as just this, deep threat, clear out guy, but that's not what he was in college. I mean, he was doing pretty much everything you'd ask a wide receiver to do. So I think he just wants that opportunity, and he knows that with Michael Thomas here and Willie Snead here, he might not get that here. But ultimately, I think the issue is those 3 guys are all so competitive, but I think they do have a pretty strong relationship. But then it picked up this whole debate because Michael Thomas tweeted out a quote from a rap song.
Right.
And he said immediately,
something about being jealous.
Something about if the jealousy makes him
that's what got everybody all peaked up.
The jealousy makes him part ways or something like that. But it was from a rap song. I looked it up, and then Brandon Cooks.
But you have to think he put it for a reason. I mean, let's be honest.
I know.
Why are you just throwing out a rap lyric that happens to work out?
That mixtape just came out. That's the thing. Right. And Mike Thomas, the only reason I'll give him the benefit of the doubt is because he's constantly tweeting rap lyrics.
True.
Now, so
I do know that
this guy Don Q's mixtape just dropped, so he was tweeting that out. But the reason it picked up even more was because Brandon Cooks tweeted, the Drake line, "Trigger fingers turn to Twitter fingers," and then he deleted it. So it's just all going back and forth. And then the Keenan Lewis thing, we don't even need to get into. That guy's just out there doing some crazy stuff.
What is up with Keenan? By the way, this is the most rap lyrics we've ever had on the show, and mentions of rappers. Hey, I got to bring this up. You were in Indianapolis, and I know people want to know your opinion of players you saw that you liked. Here's the thing. We all know the Saints need defense. That's no secret. Pass rushers, linebackers, cornerback, maybe even safety now. Obviously, that Jarris Byrd was let go. The 11th pick of the draft, do you have a few guys that in your head that might satisfy some of those needs?
Yeah, well, I in my first mock draft, I gave them Sidney Jones, the cornerback out of Washington. And now I know a lot of, obviously Washington was in the Final Four, but, I mean, a big reason why was, their secondary was so good.
Yes.
I mean, the teams were barely throwing at Sidney Jones.
Right.
And you look at how Marcus Peters has, developed in the NFL for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's been one of the top cornerbacks over the past 2 seasons. I just think that he has the athleticism, he has the technique to be really good in the NFL. And then another guy who might actually fall, I was thinking that he would go top 10, Reuben Foster, the linebacker out of Alabama. But then there's the issue, he got into it with a hospital worker while he was in Indianapolis, got sent home. So now, teams are going to be questioning him a lot throughout the process and at his pro day. But I just think this is the kind of guy who you put in the middle of your defense. And, we had the issue, the Saints did, with, Stephon Anthony not being able to, show good instincts and make the right calls. Reuben Foster would be able to upgrade that spot a lot, and that would help both the front line and the secondary.
I got to tell you, if I had the second pick of the draft and all this other stuff that the Combine notwithstanding, obviously you go Myles Garrett first, but I think he'd be my second pick. Yeah. That's how good he is, and maybe, just maybe, this might make teams hesitate to maybe possibly fall to them.
For sure, yeah. No, I think ultimately this could be, unless there is a bigger, issue at hand here with Reuben Foster, I think this could actually be good news for the Saints, that he might slide a little bit. And then, we got to talk about defensive ends. I think you could look at all the defensive ends in this draft class and point out one reason or another why they wouldn't fit with the Saints. Of course, except Myles Garrett. That dude's going to be a beast wherever he goes. But Tack McKinley out of UCLA. This is a big physical guy, super athletic. Checked every box that teams were wondering about. He still has some growing up to do, but I think, he's big enough that you put him on the side opposite Cam Jordan, and he's going to be able to help you against the run, get to the passer a little bit, and so that's definitely a guy they could consider.
All right, I got to talk about the LSU people. We are down in South Louisiana. They do care. I know the Saints aren't necessarily in the market for a running back. I think anybody would love to have Leonard Fournette. They got bigger needs, but what did you see from him? This guy ran a 4.5 at 240 pounds.
Right.
That's pretty nasty.
Yeah, no, it's so crazy that everyone was freaking out about his, low vertical jump. But the fact is, he's not going to be, there's only a few running backs that ever really jump over players. He's going to be, running through guys.
He does that, too, by the way.
I've seen him do it. Yeah. And, no, I saw Dave Gettleman, the Panthers GM, who, that might be a really good fit for them with Leonard Fournette. But he said that,
I hope not.
I know. I'm sure Saints fans don't want to hear that. But he said that, a 240-pound back is going to run over more guys than a 180-pound back. So, whatever he finally weighs in at with his new team, he's got the power and the speed to be, a real big playmaker in the NFL, and I expect him to go top 10 as well.
Hey, Jamal Adams, this is a guy, they did lose Jarris Byrd. I know they expect Von Bell to step in, but Jamal Adams from LSU, along with a couple linebackers that we like, Duke Riley and Kendall Beckwith. What do you think about these guys?
So I think Jamal Adams probably a top 5 pick. He ran, in the 4.5s, and really, he's shown the power and the playmaking ability that as long as he showed that he was fast enough, because one thing at the Combine this year, there were so many athletic tight ends. So if you're going to bring in a safety, it's got to be someone that's fast enough to run with these tight ends.
Would you take him over Jabril Peppers?
I would, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
Right.
Because
I would too, but I'm curious.
No, and I really like Jabril Peppers. I think, on the right team, he's going to be able to, be a useful piece on both offense and special teams in addition to defense, because, the reason they did that with him at Michigan is because he was so talented as a running back and as a returner that I think, if the right team finds the right way to use him, and it's going to be as a safety primarily, but I think he's going to be a good player. But Jamal Adams, I think, definitely has a higher ceiling.
Yeah, I know LSU had 10 guys at the Combine. That's the second most behind Michigan. Guys like Duke Riley, obviously Kendall Beckwith, we mentioned Tre'Davious White, Malachi Dupree, Traven Durrell, Ethan Posick, Davin Gottschall, and Tayshaun Bauer. But let's get into some sleepers that aren't LSU guys that you like a lot. I know you like a couple from Ohio State, maybe a guy from USC.
Yeah, so, you got to keep looking at the guys from Ohio State, and Curtis Samuel is a player that I would think, based on who the Saints have had in their offense over the years, guys
running back, wide receiver from Ohio
Darren
State.
Sproles, Reggie Bush, guys like that. He started as a running back, but then they got him more involved in the passing game, and this guy ran I think it was a 4.31 this week. So he's a really dynamic player, someone that could end up going in the first round, although, most people project him in the second.
Yeah.
Now, I know a lot of Saints fans are going to, shake their head if they go with a high offensive player, but Mickey Loomis, when he was talking to the team website, said that, they have to remember that there are good offensive players in this draft, and he's definitely one that could help. Who else was?
Raekwon McMillan's a linebacker, and Adoree Jackson from USC.
So, Raekwon McMillan, another hard-hitting guy. So if for some reason, they don't end up with Reuben Foster, I definitely think they should consider him. We'll see what they do in free agency, but they definitely need plenty of help at linebacker, and he's someone that, you bring him in. And I always hesitate with linebacker because the Saints have to consider the possibility that, Stephon Anthony will still improve and earn that role. But, Adoree Jackson, another hard-hitting safety. That
speed all over the place.
Definitely, and he's a freak athlete. I think the only thing is his technique, and he's just got to learn the game a little bit better.
You see the Saints ball?
Yeah.
I hate to say I lost the one with all the Hall of Famers, but I still have this one. And
it's in my car. I took it from
Did you find it on the road? All right, there you go. That's our tradition here. Hey, we've had all the other Saints guys, Duncan, Triplett, all of them. They've signed it, and I'm glad to have you here. Triplets may be on the road, though. And here's a gift certificate for a great restaurant I would love for you to go check out. It's uptown on Maple between Carrollton and Broadway. Call Shays Della Shays. Thank you so much, Josh.
Thank you.
We got a big show. I've got the commissioner, my first commissioner ever from the Sun Belt Conference. That's right. He is coming up next. His name is Karl Benson. He has been a commissioner for 27 years in 3 different conferences. You know John Brady. He's coming up as well at the end of the show. He is my basketball analyst. That's right, the last coach that took LSU to the Final Four back in 2006. And for the first time ever, we're going to have a soccer guy. That's right, Kenny Farrell. He is the head coach for the New Orleans Jesters. We're going to talk Jesters, but we're going to talk MLS and EPL, European Premier League. So I look forward to that coming up. But next, like I said, the commish right here on Primetime Sports. Welcome back to Primetime Sports, and I want to thank Josh Katzenstein for giving us the entire rundown of what happened up in Indianapolis last week at the NFL Combine. I cannot wait for free agency to start. And I can't wait for my next guest either, because this is conference tournament time, and I happen to have the Sun Belt Commissioner. That's right, that is the tournament being played right here in New Orleans at UNO Lakefront Arena. I urge you to get on down there. If you're a Hoop fan, if you're just a sports fan in general, do it. But my next guest, Karl Benson, and he's been now 5 years with the Sun Belt Conference. He's been a commissioner literally for 27 years. First with the MAC for 4 years, had a long run in the WAC, the Western Athletic Conference, for 18 years, and now he's down here in New Orleans where the offices are and where their tournament is. Karl Benson.
Scott, thank you. Likewise. Nice to be
I
here.
felt like saying Karl Denson at first because I'm a music fan, and I go see this musician named Karl Denson. But I have to say, what's it like being able to put the title commissioner before your name for 27 years? Because I can barely get people to say Mr.
Well, I prefer Karl or KB than commissioner, because the only commissioner that deserves that type of recognition is Commissioner Gordon from Batman. That was the first commissioner.
I was trying to figure out where you were going with this. Is he going to go NBA on me? Is he going to go Major League Baseball? But you one-up me with the Batman. Hey, I want people to know who you are, first of all. I kind of gave them a brief run of your history. But first of all, how do you become a commissioner? And tell them about your background.
Started out as a college baseball coach. Wanted to coach at Arizona State, but ended up at a little junior college in the Seattle area and drifted out of coaching into administration. Then I wanted to be the athletic director at Arizona State, and that didn't happen either, but I ended up at the NCAA, and it was at the NCAA that introduced me to conference business and conference administration, and rather than be an athletic director, I became a commissioner in 1990, and here 27 years later as the Sun Belt Commissioner.
People might not remember, because down here we all would think LSU is the baseball power. In the 90s they were, but Arizona State was a power and still is very good. Obviously Barry Bonds went there and several other greats, but why the fascination with Arizona State?
Growing up in the Northwest, you wanted to get out of the rain. You wanted to go to Arizona. That was Arizona State and Southern Cal on the west coast were the two prominent teams when I was in high school, and then kind of the wannabe college player.
Yeah, two of the greatest programs of all time, in fact. Well, let's get to your conference now, the Sun Belt Conference. This is a big event. I believe this is the fourth year, I could be wrong right in there, fourth year that the tournament has been in New Orleans?
Fourth year back at Lakefront. Back in the 90s, the tournament was here for a while.
Sure.
But we brought the tournament back from Hot Springs, Arkansas to New Orleans in 2013. And now we're settling in, and it's a great arena. It's a great venue for us. We've now changed the format this year that hopefully will make it even a little bit more fan-friendly. And all 12 teams, 12 men's teams, 12 women's teams are starting play on Tuesday, and it'll be wall-to-wall basketball at the Lakefront Arena through Sunday afternoon, early evening.
I can't wait. The LSU former Final Four coach who was in your conference for 8 years, John Brady, who was on the show later. He's been my basketball analyst all basketball season, but he said, man, I was trying to get Karl to put every team in for long. The year I leave, they finally get all teams in.
He still influences a lot. He's the one who started the format we had a year ago and we got rid of. So I hope that he'll like this new format. But I think it's the right format. You can argue and debate, how many teams should be in. But when you really think about why we're doing this, it's for the student athletes.
Sure.
It's to give them a postseason opportunity. And if you take 8 out of 12 or 10 out of 12, that's an issue. And so I think this is the right format. And again, Lakefront Arena, I think, is the perfect venue for us.
It's a great basketball viewing venue. Honestly, any seat in the house is great. I've been to a lot of UNO games there this year. I have to ask you, why do teams get left out of the tournament? I mean, that's a question I'm really asking for the fan out there, because I get asked a lot. Why do not, I'm not talking about your conference only. A lot of conferences in every sport, they only bring a certain amount sometimes. Sometimes they bring the whole team. But why do they do that?
It's philosophical. I mean, you either want to do an event that is totally inclusive, or you want to narrow it and create a more exclusive. You can debate, does a team that's 6 and 26 deserve to play in the postseason. We don't know how and why that team got to 6 and 26. Were there injuries? Were there difficulties going on? And so I think that to use the postseason and the conference play, that's what conferences were created for, was for regular season play and conference championships, long before the NCAA had 68 teams, when the NCAA tournament was 24 teams and went to 36, and now that it's 68. So this is part of March Madness, and we crown 2 champions on Sunday, the women's champion and the men's champion, and from there they represent the Sun Belt going forward to the NCAA.
And there it is. You see, March 7th to 11th, the women start today, and then obviously the men get it going tomorrow. We'll wrap up on Sunday. You've had some success, and I know you have to be thrilled with this, because as a commissioner, when you see what they call a mid-major conference get in there and win a tournament game that's huge, and you've done it each of the last 2 years. Last year was Arkansas Little Rock beating 3rd seed Missouri. The year before, I watched this every minute of this particular game. It was Georgia State with R.J. Hunter's heroics taking down, obviously, Baylor, who was a 3rd seed as well. Talk about what that means and the excitement that brings to your conference.
Well, it's credibility, and when you put teams into the tournament, your goal is obviously to win the national championship. But in order to win a national championship, you have to win that first round game. And there's 32 conferences that will be represented by their champion in the tournament. And when you think about the number of conferences who advance into the tournament, that's when you start singling out the conferences. And now the Sun Belt, 2 years in a row, we've set a little standard. There's an expectation. I think the NCAA committee knows that when Sun Belt teams get into the tournament, they produce. And I think that our champion this year, will follow in the footsteps of both, as you said, Georgia State and last year Little Rock.
And even the year before, University of Louisiana. See, I said it. My good friends in Lafayette, the Raging Cajuns, they had a top 10 pick in Alfred Payton, who's doing some great things with Orlando Magic. But you mentioned the term national champions, and I got to bring it up because the Sun Belt, baseball is near and dear to the hearts of everybody in South Louisiana. There's a lot of great quality programs. But the national champion resides right now in the Sun Belt Conference. And LSU fans, you should know who that is. The Coastal Carolina Chanticleers came into Baton Rouge and upset LSU, and then they went to Omaha and did the same across the entire World Series. How does that feel to have the World Series champion in your conference?
Well, it was awfully fun sitting in Baton Rouge at LSU, watching Coastal Carolina last year, knowing that they were 2 or 3 weeks away from official membership in the Sun Belt. And then as they went to Omaha, the publicity and the notoriety and the anticipation that they were going to be in the Sun Belt, and they win, and the recognition, the titles, all the banners, future member, now member of the Sun Belt Conference. So it brings a lot of credibility. Sun Belt baseball has been tremendous over the course of time, and whether it's the Raging Cajuns or it's South Alabama, or just go right down the list. But you bring in, Coastal Carolina now as a perennial top 25 team. The Sun Belt, will be a top 5, 6, 7, conference in the country this year.
That's huge.
With multiple bids.
That's huge, Karl. We have a map of actually the conference and where the cities are, and it's kind of neat to see. I know right now you have 2 football member-only teams that are only going to be in for 1 more year. That's New Mexico State and Idaho. But this makes a lot more sense because this is truly the Sun Belt right here.
It really is, and we've done this with a purpose. So the strategy 5 years ago at this time, the Sun Belt was part of a realignment, and we lost some traditional members of the Sun Belt, but we've added 6 schools, and that map that you just saw, Scott, is what we wanted. We wanted geography. We wanted our student athletes to be being able to put on buses rather than airplanes all the time. And we've got 2 teams in Texas, 2 in Arkansas, 2 in Alabama, 2 in Georgia, 2 in the Carolinas, and it's great. It's a great balance, and we're really proud of what our member universities have done.
Great schools in there. I was in Georgia for a while. I know all about Georgia State, know all about Georgia Southern. Obviously, I'm from here. You have a lot to be proud of. Mr. Benson, the commissioner, the commish. And by the way, one of those teams you saw in there, UT Arlington, is the #1 seed. And get to watch this basketball team. They're very good. And I can't wait to watch the entire tournament. I have a very nice gift certificate for you for a nice restaurant uptown. I want you to take your wife or somebody that you love. And also, we have a thing. I don't have a Sun Belt ball. I don't have one of those. Maybe I get one from you. If you don't mind just signing me, I got the Saints bracket up here and right here. Appreciate you so much, Karl.
My pleasure,
and
Scott.
I look forward to seeing you again. I'll probably see you this week over there at UNO Lakefront Arena. Get down there and check it out if you have an opportunity. Hey, coming up next, I have a first. I have my first commissioner right here because I've had many coaches, many players, many athletic directors, many GMs, but never commissioner. But I've also have a first. I've never talked really a whole lot about soccer, and I'm about to do that next right here with Kenny Farrell. He is the head coach of the New Orleans Jesters. We're going to get into the openings of the MLS, that's Major League Soccer season, as well as the EPL, the English Premier League. Looking forward to that coming up next right here. Don't forget John Brady. He's going to wrap it up when we talk about the conference tournaments in basketball that are starting up this week. We'll see you coming up next right here on Primetime Sports.
The owners of the Delachaise Wine Bar on St. Charles Avenue have opened up their newest creation uptown on Maple Street called Chez Delachaise, a new local wine bistro featuring a larger menu of small and large plates, a brighter atmosphere, and full table service. Additionally, patrons can enjoy a large patio out front as well as an extensive wine list offering selections from around the world. It's Chez Delachaise, 7708 Maple Street between Carrollton and Broadway.
Rock and roll will never die. It's old New Orleans, my, oh my. Come on, baby, let's go rock and roll at the city lane. All night, let's roll, let's rock and roll. Baby, do the rock and roll. At Mid-City Lane's the home of rock and roll.
Crescent City Steakhouse, a true neighborhood restaurant operated by the Boykovich family since 1934. It is the oldest steakhouse in the city of New Orleans. Serving only hand-cut, prime-aged, corn-fed beef for over 80 years, Crescent City Steakhouse has become a dining destination for both die-hard locals and adventurous travelers who seek traditional, timeless New Orleans cuisine. Crescent City Steakhouse, 1001 North Broad, on the corner of St. Philip, in the heart of New Orleans. Welcome back to Primetime Sports, and always, once again, love to hear that music from our New Orleans musicians. That one was Big Sam from Big Sam's Funky Nation. Hey, I promised you soccer fans this was your show, and here he is right now, the head coach for the New Orleans Jesters. His name is Kenny Farrell. He is a native of Ireland, but he's been in the Crescent City for a little over 2 decades, and he's been head coach of the New Orleans Jesters since they started as the Shell Shockers back in 2003, but he has become our soccer correspondent. We're going to talk English Premier League. We're going to talk MLS, which season just started, and we're, of course, going to talk about his team, the New Orleans Jesters. But welcome, my friend, Kenny Farrell. We had a chance meeting at Ye Old College Inn a few months ago. Are you with your father-in-law?
Well, I'd say it's a good chance.
That's a good chance. It was fun. But first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. I'm excited about this because ever since I mentioned that I was going to have a soccer coach, and most people around here know who you are if they're into soccer, and they immediately started retweeting. They started, sharing the Facebook thing. I'm like, golly, this guy's well known. I got a big guest here. But let's talk about it. Sure. About your growing up in Ireland and then getting over to New Orleans. How'd that happen?
Well, obviously played youth soccer in Ireland, and it was, kind of a tough upbringing. And, soccer gave me a pathway out. I ended up playing in the League of Ireland for Shelbourne Football Club, which is a big club in Ireland, and an opportunity came to go to the United States. I played at Salem State College, NCAA, and actually played in the Final Four back in the early 90s. And just everything opened up for me there. I didn't really plan it. It just happened. And then while I was over here and playing at Salem, I used to come visit New Orleans, something a city I always loved. And so, At a point around the mid-90s, I said I'd come and live here for a year. Couple of years maybe.
And it's just
still here.
You got roots.
Couldn't leave.
Well, what do you make growing up in Ireland? What did you hear about New Orleans? I'm curious.
Jazz music. They really didn't talk about the food. They talked about the jazz music, and of course they're music lovers in Ireland. You know,
Okay.
we don't make the best food in Ireland, so we didn't really understand that. But
Yeah,
it was
I
the
bet.
jazz music, and and then I saw a couple of movies. One of my favorite little movies was The Jungle Book when I was growing up, and some of those songs and then I trying to put it together, and I wanted to come here, and I'd seen pictures of it and photographs of it, and when I first came, I just loved it, fell in love with it, and then didn't know where life was going to take me really, but when I had an opportunity to come and live for a while, I wanted to come here and spend some time here before I had to get real with life, I suppose.
Sure.
And then just ended up staying here and living in soccer, so it's been a dream. I mean, it's soccer in New Orleans. I mean,
You're 15 years with this organization. I know the team has been named that for about half that time. But talk about the Jesters for people that don't know. What are they about? What league are they in? And explain that to folks.
Well, they're in the National Premier Soccer League, which is considered the fourth level tier in the United States.
Okay.
And we play in what's called the Southern Region, and our conference is the Southeast. And it's a league where you can use young players coming through pre-college. Some players can sign pro for clubs. They don't lose eligibility if they're young players. And so we focus on trying to get the best young talent we can find and groom them through our system.
Okay.
And then we bring in, other players from overseas that I know from connections around to strengthen it, because also on a Saturday night at Pan American Stadium, you want to win the game, right? So we're trying to bring in good players and mix them with the local players, and then provide opportunities that they can move on to a higher level later on, which has happened, I think, as you well know, with Andrew Tarbell and Patrick Mullins.
Well, I want to talk about those guys because the MLS season just started this past week. But I think I think all the teams played one game. But two of those teams have players that played for you. One of them is out west, obviously San Jose, the Earthquakes. They have Andrew Tarbell, but Patrick Mullins at DC United. This guy's getting a lot of time. So talk about these guys.
Yeah, well, Andrew played for me when he was 16 years old.
Mandeville kid, correct?
Mandeville, yeah.
Yeah.
Raw talent when he came in, was working very hard in his game, super kid. We knew he had the talent, and he just planned his life very well. He's perfect to become a professional sports, player. And I think, playing in the games that he played with us, he played against, I threw him in the deep end when he was 16 years old. And before he actually ever went to college, he had probably played 10 to 16 games, in my opinion, that were probably higher than his college level going in as a freshman.
Impressive.
And when I spoke to his coach up at Clemson where he played, John Murphy, who's a friend of mine for years, used to be with the New England Revolution. I said, this kid's got games that are better games than yours under his belt already. And he said, you're joking. And then they developed a relationship. He went on to play for Clemson, played in the national championship game.
Goalie?
Yeah. Went on as goalkeeper. And then...
The national championship, you just said?
Yeah, he played in the national championship game 2 years ago. So when he goes to the draft, and this is a Mandeville kid, right? When he goes to the draft, he was selected by a team that already had a U.S. national team goalkeeper.
Wow.
San Jose Earthquake. So Dominic Kinnear was asked, why did you, draft him? He said, simply because he's the best player in the draft.
That's amazing. What about Patrick Mullins over at DC United?
Brilliant. I'm so happy for him because he got drafted. He came in and played for us. I think it was late teens. Played 2 or 3 years with us, and came through the local youth system in Metairie, and ended up playing for us, which I think was great preparation for him. Now, people may not understand what the Herman Trophy is, but it's soccer's equivalent to the Heisman, and he won that at college as a soccer player 2 years in a row, which is an amazing feat.
That is.
Then he got drafted first round for New England Revolution, wasn't protected, got picked up by New York City FC, and it was difficult to get in there because that was a star-studded lineup with Lampard and Villa and all these huge players there, and he wasn't breaking in. So right at the deadline last year, DC United picked him up, and he played for the University of Maryland. And he changed their fortunes. He was the right chemistry at the right time for that team. And now he's finding his feet, and he's just doing tremendously well. And I hope he goes on to the US national team.
It's got to be a good feeling to have your former players succeeding on such a high level. Speaking of that level, by the way, like I said, the Major League Soccer League just started this past weekend. That's the old logo right here, and they've changed it to a little simpler look. But I love the style. It's kind of got a Scottish feel, or at least a European feel to it. Atlanta, a place where I was for a long time. You know, I'm a native of New Orleans. I love New Orleans, but I live there. Yeah. If you win, they get behind you there, but that's the only time. Yeah. And Atlanta this year had the 55,000 crowd. That's, I think, the fourth most in the world on that weekend, which is remarkable to say. Now, they have to win to keep it up. They lost to the New York Red Bulls, obviously the team from the great state of New York. But talk about the MLS starting their season.
Well, it's exciting for Major League Soccer. They've grown in numbers beyond where I thought they could go when they first started this thing. And they're selling out stadiums all over the country. And it's just a reflection of where, soccer is finding itself in this country, and they're doing a great job managing it at their level. So the Atlanta deal, I was kind of surprised when they said when they had bid to become a Major League Soccer.
Georgia, right. They play at Georgia Tech, which is a great stadium, outdoor stadium to play in.
But they got a great team in at the management level. I think they had, in the first year after announcing, which was probably about 2 years ago, I think they had 30,000 season tickets.
Yes.
Sold. Absolutely incredible. Now they got the population there and they got the soccer back.
Say they do.
Look, I think they're going to be fantastic, and I just want to play them.
Get a little shot at them. I know you play some Major League Soccer teams as well. Yeah. Hey, you're going to be our soccer correspondent, so we're going to get into the MLS later. Obviously, there's a ton of European Premier League fans here. I have friends that love the Arsenal. I have others that love Man U, like yourself. Chelsea, of course, several others. But the team that won it all last year, 5,001 odds, and that's the one thing I did a soccer thing on. Leicester came out of nowhere to win. That had to be a huge shocker.
Incredible. I mean, the chemistry of the team at that time was perfect. The players understood their roles, and they had the perfect manager at the perfect time, who has been fired since, by the way.
Which is crazy.
It's crazy.
You just win 5,001 and there you fire. There they are.
Yeah.
They're the Foxes.
And they're in the Champions League. But no, it was great. But it was great for soccer for this reason, because when you see that the teams that spend all the money and have all the players can end up second, third, fourth, and you got a team that just knuckles down, gets it done, they put the right players together, the chemistry's right, the tactics right, the management is right, and they go and win it. That was the best thing happen, soccer. That means that if you really put your time in, you can get it done.
It got interest out there. And I mean, the baseball, I remember the Braves went from worst to first, and it happens. But hey, you look a lot younger than me, but we are around the same age. I grew up, soccer was not the sport I grew up playing. I played the other three major sports, but I always knew who Pele was. Did you grow up knowing who he was as well?
Knew exactly who he was. And,
right, I figured, obviously.
Funny enough, in 1974, we were living in London. My parents had moved there for work. And I saw him play at Craven Cottage against Fulham for Santos, his club team, when I was just a kid. It was amazing, to be honest with you.
Greatest player of all time?
Yeah, in my opinion, yeah, absolutely. And one of the
who would be in there with him? I'm sorry.
Oh, Maradona.
Diego Maradona.
Yeah.
See, I'm telling my producer, I know a little bit about it, because that was the next guy, because there's Lionel Messi, who's from Argentina now, but Maradona right there.
But I want people to understand this. Like, it's hard to compare these from generation to generation, but the refereeing, the protection that Pele did not get, that the players get today when they're superstars.
So he took a beating.
Oh, my God. If you go back and look at some of those World Cup 66 games and saw the beating he took and he was still able to produce, I think it's going to be hard to match and say that anyone's better than him.
This is what we're going to do. We're going to get you on very soon, because I'm not done with this history conversation. There's Ronaldo. There's obviously, I'm not talking about Cristiano Ronaldo now, but the old Brazilian. So many great players out there. I want to talk about there and get your opinion, which is a heck of a lot more important than mine when it comes to soccer, for sure, and talk about all that. But, hey, this has been fun. We're going to do this a lot more, if you don't mind. My soccer correspondent, Kenny Farrell.
Thanks
I can't wait. Here, I got a nice gift certificate for you.
Oh, fantastic.
I know that you love to a nice restaurant, and we're gonna sign this ball. I don't have a soccer ball. You need to get me a Jester's ball for your next appearance.
Bring the ball. Yeah.
And if you could put me a signature right there, Kenny Farrell.
Absolutely.
I am so excited to have him on. We're gonna have him on a lot more. John Brady is my basketball correspondent. Kenny Farrell is going to be my football correspondent. Soccer, of course, we say down here. Hey, coming up next, John Brady. Speaking of him, we're going to talk about the conference tournaments that are coming up this week, right here on Primetime Sports. Welcome back to Primetime Sports. And as a basketball fan, I got to tell you, I always look forward to this segment with my basketball analyst during the NCAA, obviously during the season and the tournament. His name is John Brady, and he is the last coach that brought the LSU Tigers to the Final Four. That was over a decade, Coach, but we're talking about today. Okay. So let's talk about what's happened with UNO. I've got to give them props off the bat. They are the winning team in New Orleans. They just won outright the Southland Conference, the first time that they have won a conference title in 20 years, and certainly the first since they've been in the Southland. Head coach Mark Schlesinger gets the Coach of the Year, well-deserved, and obviously Eric Thomas, the Mercurial forward, gets the Player of the Year for the conference. Well done.
Well, it is, and anytime you can have the Coach of the Year, which he was and deserves, and then the Player of the Year and Eric Thomas, you know good things that happened on the lakefront. And we were out there the other night and watched them play Southeastern. Southeastern played really well, but then things happened in the league where some teams got beat, and they went on the road and won at Nichols and won it outright, and it was a great accomplishment for them. And also good for some basketball in Louisiana to be positive for a change.
Right, it's been tough. It's been tough around here, Coach. And by the way, if they hadn't beaten Nichols, they would have been in a four-way tie for first, and that's a lot less sexy than getting it all. So congrats to UNO. And while we're at it, let's look at the conference looks of the teams that around here that are playing in conference tournaments. Obviously, it starts off, I believe, with LSU playing Mississippi State on Wednesday night at 6. You have two Southland Conference games, the second and fourth on that list. Southeastern plays Lamar Wednesday at 7:30, and UNO is going to be in a double bye Friday. But Tulane, in between, in the American Conference, plays Thursday at 5. But I want to explain, Coach, what a double bye means, and I'm going to let you do it. We have a bracket for the Southland Conference on. You know, that's over in Katy, Texas. We had the Sun Belt Commissioner, and that's here in New Orleans. But the Southland plays in Katy. But here's the bracket that shows you what it is, and explain what that means with the double bye.
Well, I've always been a proponent, since the conference tournament winner usually in these type of leagues get the automatic bid to the NCAA. I've always been a proponent of somebody that goes through the regular season and earns the number 1 seed, doesn't need to play the first day or two. So in this particular case, winning the conference regular season title, as UNO did, gives them a double bye. They're automatically in the semifinals.
So they just have to win 2 games.
They win 2 games.
And it's fair, isn't it, Coach?
Well, I think it's fair because based on what they've done during the regular season. And I don't think they need to play the same number of games that the last place team needs to play in order to earn the right to represent the league in the NCAA tournament.
And that's always the case, but they get the second game off, which I think is good because the conference, you play all year to win the conference, and you don't get any automatic bid to the tournament. So this makes it a little easier.
Gives them something to play for.
Something to play for. So we have to talk about the Southeastern Conference. There's a lot of fans down here. This has not been LSU's year. I mentioned in the open that they broke their 15-game losing streak, the most in school history, against Tennessee last week, but then they lost the final game to Mississippi State. But believe it or not, they are not the last seed in this tournament, which is hard to believe. It is Missouri, and because they beat Missouri. But here's the look at the conference, and we're going to look at matchup to matchup, and let's start with the first round games, which are tomorrow night on Wednesday. It's Mississippi State and LSU. Right. You know both of these programs very well. You coached at one. You actually coached at the other as an assistant, and you're from the state of Mississippi. So talk about that one first.
Well, I was spoke in Mississippi at the Hall of Fame. They were honoring the Collegiate Players of the Year, and I spoke there. And I happened to run into Ben Howland and ask him about the matchup with LSU. He's a little leery of that matchup because this is the third time to play them. They beat them twice, and they have to play them another time in the same week. Now, it's hard to beat a team 3 times in one season, particularly when you're playing them in the same week. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I do say this, and I believe this.
Okay.
If LSU will defend, they're going to score 78, 75, 78, 79 points. If they defend, they have a chance to defeat Mississippi State.
No doubt.
I really believe that. And I think if they do rebound it and defend it pretty well, they got a chance to beat Mississippi State in the first round of the SEC tournament.
Yeah, I have a chance to be a Miss America too, but I don't know if it's going to happen. You have to feel that Ben Howland has to feel pretty decent about playing a team that has lost 16 of their last 17 games. That is a fact.
Well, on the other side of the coin, the way he feels, he thinks LSU is going to allow them to score, and if they defend at all, he thinks he's in pretty good shape.
Okay, that's the honest part coming out.
Right.
All right, but good luck, Tigers, because there's always a chance. All right, so here's the thing. The second matchup, I don't think a lot of people care that much about, but around here at least. But if you live in Auburn, you live in Missouri, you probably do. It's Auburn and Missouri. Bruce Pearl is playing against a coach that has already said that he's going to be gone at the end of the season. So how does that weigh into this?
Well, obviously, I think you have to give Auburn the edge. Bruce Pearl's been in tournament situations a couple of years ago. Auburn was seeded low and won 3 games and got to the semifinals. So I think his team's going to be ready to play. The only thing about the Auburn team that I've said all year is they rely on the three-point shot a whole lot to make their team play well. If they're not shooting it well, sometimes they have a difficult time winning.
All right, let's look at that bracket again, because these two teams that win on Wednesday will go in and play Ole Miss and Alabama. Obviously, the winner of LSU, Mississippi State plays Bama. Winner of Auburn, Missouri plays Ole Miss. But there's two other matchups in the second round: Georgia, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Vanderbilt. Let's start with the ones up top. Georgia Bulldogs against Tennessee Volunteers. Oh, by the way, you put the whammy on poor Coach Rick Barnes, because you did say 2 weeks ago that he might be a dark horse coach of the year, and I think they've lost every game since.
Well, I think it was 5 out of 6, and they lose on the road at LSU. So, I kind of stubbed my toe on that one. I stubbed my toe on that one. So I do like Georgia in this situation. Georgia's tough. They're playing better right now, and I give them the edge in this particular game.
Mark Fox, an excellent coach, but they're a little tired of being pretty good but not good enough to get in the tournament over there. I know a lot of Georgia fans, they're ready to go further, and I don't think it's going to be this year. But the other matchup, Vanderbilt's in that one, and that is a hot team right now.
Well, I think it's a must-win for Vanderbilt. People are talking about them getting into the NCAA tournament because of their strength of schedule, the quality wins they've had.
And they're hot.
And they swept Florida this year. They're playing really well right now. They're shooting the ball extremely well. They need to win this game, I think, in order to solidify an entry into the NCAA tournament.
A&M's been strong recently, not as much this year, but what do they have left?
It'd be an interesting game. They rebounded well. They defend well. Billy's from around here. He's a local guy.
Billy Kennedy.
Yeah, but I think Vanderbilt needs to win this game. I think it's going to be more important for them.
All right, let's look at the bracket again, because now we're going to talk about the top teams. Kentucky, South Carolina, Arkansas, Florida. Coach, you have the floor for 2 minutes.
I think all 4 of those teams are in the NCAA tournament. I like Florida in the SEC tournament to win it. I think Kentucky is good. I think it's Kentucky and Florida in the finals, but all 4 of those teams are in. We talked about Arkansas punching their ticket a week ago when they won at South Carolina, so I think they're in. Those 4 teams are in with Vandy on the bubble, and I've always liked Ole Miss as a dark horse, but they lost at Alabama on the road, which I think hurt them tremendously, but they did beat South Carolina in their last regular season game. So I think Ole Miss may win a game or 2 in this SEC tournament.
Ole Miss,
also.
What if they do win, say, 3 games? I guess if they win 3, they win all. If they win 2, do they have a chance?
I think they have a chance.
Okay.
I really do. Depending on what Vanderbilt does. If Vanderbilt loses that first game, and Ole Miss can win 2 or 3, they may leapfrog them in terms of being the 5th team to get in the NCAA tournament.
What makes South Carolina good?
Defend and rebound. I've always been attracted to teams that defend it and rebound it. That's what Frank Martin's about. He's about playing tough and rebounding.
You've been saying that all year. You said about Oregon early on.
I think that's their saving grace.
Yeah.
They don't score it easily some nights, but as long as they defend it, they've got a chance to keep the game workable.
And what about Arkansas? Because they made a nice run, and remember, they were in that middle pack, and then they kind of separated themselves.
I think somewhere along the line that Mike Anderson did a great job with his team halfway through the year. They changed some things defensively, changed some things offensively, and now he's got on a run here. They're in the NCAA tournament, and some people are thinking they may make some noise in the NCAA tournament by winning a couple of games.
Michael White obviously did get beat by Vanderbilt, but this guy has brought Florida back. They had a down year. Donovan's last year wasn't great last year, but good, very good. This year they're better than very good. They have a chance, like you said, to win this tournament, maybe go somewhere in the big
No
game.
question about it. I think he is by far should be Coach of the Year in the Southeastern Conference right now. Calipari's done a great job, but I think Mike White deserves to be SEC Coach of the Year.
You know who else has done a good job?
Who's that?
John Brady. My man. My man. Guess what? We're going to have a full hour with you, and we're supposed to have Daddy Dale Brown. We'll cross our fingers on that one, but next week we're going to have a full hour. We're going to be live from Walk-Ons, which is going to be great, and that's going to be our March Madness show. We're going to talk about all the great teams in the NCAA. This guy has been fabulous, and I cannot wait. We're going to get in an open atmosphere, and we're going to have a lot of fun. So make sure you join us on that show next week, because it's March Madness time, baby. And I have so many people to thank. My man Will Hill does a fabulous job producing this show. Naila, Kenny Juno makes the sound work. The Redhead Tsunami makes the whole engine tick, for me at least. And then you have all the guys like Ron Yeager and Jim Dotson, and those are WLE, and I can't forget Jeff Brenner and Ashley Coleman over at CST. It's been a great time. I want to thank everybody from Primetime Sports. See you next week.